very soon, at a time when all kinds of other things are happening, climate change, soil erosion, all those things. So how are we going to feed people? Ironically enough, that population growth was partly about better food, wasn't it? So
Yep.
as a result of our success, we have more and more people and more challenges to feed them. And so just as we're going to explore how technology can help or what options we have. And Neil, I want to start with you because you have, in Ripple Foods, you have invented or reinvented milk.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
That's right. Those stats are the stats that really scared us and really pushed us into action. You know, that we need to make more food on this planet in the next 50 years, and the food that the planet has produced in the last 10,000. Right? I mean, just that it's staggering the amount of food the planet needs to make, and the challenge that's in front of us. And we need to do that focusing on nutrition and focusing on sustainability, finding ways to feed the planet sustainably. So we went about and recognized that the dairy industry was actually the largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in our
We're not going
our
into
food
details
system.
here, right?
Yeah, right. So really said, okay, if we want to find the best way of making an alternative dairy product, how do we do that from a technological standpoint?
And so the dairy industry, partly because of what the cows themselves
Absolutely.
emit, but also because of deforestation, because of the land use competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's about half the cows and the methane from the cows, and half what goes into making the feed that feeds the cows. It's about equal in terms of the impact on the planet.
And your solution is?
So our solution is to identify the right proteins to combine with the right fats and the right sugars to make something that is more dairy-like than anything else that's out there, and do it in a sustainable way. So we identified the peas, yellow peas, as the most sustainable source of protein out there today at scale, and we have a proprietary process that purifies the protein from yellow peas, makes it super clean, and we use that to help formulate a milk along with some sunflower oils and some sugars as well.
So it's nutritionally as good as milk.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah,
What's
I'd say it's better, in fact.
I'm sure you would. What's it taste like?
It tastes, I wouldn't say it's exactly like milk, but it's far closer to milk than any of the alternative dairy products that are out there.
But of course, the magic thing about milk is what you can do with milk. So
exactly right.
Cheese and yogurt
and
all those things.
Those are all things that we're doing as well.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. So we're out in the marketplace. We're about 4,000 or 5,000 stores nationwide in Target and Whole Foods. We've been, we launched about a year ago or so. And we have 4 different flavors of milk in 2 different sizes. And we're launching a half and half later this summer, a kids program later this summer. And then we've got yogurts that are fantastic and taste like real yogurt, which is a massive opportunity because, plant-based yogurts, I'm not sure if anybody in the audience has had plant-based yogurts, but they are truly terrible. They just don't, they don't have the nutrition that a normal yogurt has, and they taste off. They don't taste right. So all things that you can do if you kind of break down the problem and think about it more scientifically.
So Sven, as an investor, looking at that product, if you were to invest in it, would it be because of its ecological footprint or because it mimics milk in important ways? Or what are the criteria for this sector in what's going to work and what's not going to work and what you would choose to back?
Yeah, so for the record, we are actually an investor in Ripple. We are also an investor in a couple of other food-related companies. The thing that's important for us is that it can get to scale. So if it is an idea, but it doesn't really scale to mass food production, it is probably not interesting from an environmental perspective, but it also isn't interesting from a commercial perspective either. So one of the questions is, can that actually scale to a mass product? The second thing is the consumer acceptance of this? It is milk not quite done the way we think about milk, aka with cows. So consumers need to be okay with that. Unfortunately, in milk, there's already a whole bunch of what I would call milk substitutes.
Right.
So there's a precedent for that. But we have another company, for example, called Impossible Food, where we make meat. And it is meat from plant protein. And there, one of the big questions was, can we make meat so, not for vegetarians, but so that meat eaters, like dyed-in-the-wool sort of meat eaters, would actually like this. And so that's the other side of it. So are consumers actually accepting of that?
And does it bleed?
Yes, and it sizzles the appropriate amount, and it smells correct, and has the correct texture, and all of that. And the way we entered the market with this company is actually we went out to the places where people really cared about meat. So Momofuku, for example, is a famous restaurant in New York, and the chef there very much is a meat eater and likes to prepare meat. So these are the sort of early testing grounds. Is it acceptable by people who actually like meat?
So this is really all about, in ecological terms, apart from consumer acceptance and all that, it's about the conversion ratio in some ways, because you're still having to grow things, and you're still ending up with the protein that we eat. But instead of having the animal convert the vegetable into the protein, we're finding better ways to do it.
Yeah, we're
And that makes
disintermediating the cow, right?
We're
Yeah.
mediating, we're being the cow,
Yeah.
and we're doing it more efficiently.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. You look at the conversion rates of cow feed to cow protein or to milk, and they're terrible. They're really terrible. So if you can actually go to the primary source and actually make that protein or that product from the plant itself, it's far better for the planet because you need less of the feedstock in order to do it.
Right. And have you encountered, when you think of how profound the culture of food is, we're all deeply attached to, the foods we had in childhood, or, our favorite cheese, which is from a particular terroir and all that kind of thing. Are you up against a big cultural resistance here? Are you appealing only to the health food stores? Or?
No, I think it's actually an opportunity, really. What we find is that if you introduce a new sustainable product in somebody's life, it helps them think about sustainability across all of the product choices that they make. So it's actually it's a huge opportunity in terms of who we source, who our customers are. Roughly a third of them are traditional dairy drinkers, right? So we're touching people that haven't touched alternative dairy products before, and they're learning about the product and learning about the sustainability impacts and enjoying the product and starting to think about the choices they make in far different ways. I would assume the same thing happens with Impossible Foods.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has changed is, I think some of the older replacement products, let's say, have been just not very good. And so they lacked the consumer acceptance, and that doesn't make them scale, and hence we don't have an impact.
You mean that kind of gray soya protein that we were encouraged to think of as meat? Yeah.
For example. But by now, technology moves on, and we can actually now make things that are, in my opinion, as good, and in some cases actually indistinguishable from for example, meat or from dairy. And that's a really big shift, and as humankind we didn't have this opportunity before, but we do have it now.
Okay, so you're both talking though about something which in a way is still connected to a natural process. You do grow stuff and then you process it differently. Can you go further? Can we get, because given that there is always going to be competition for land use, maybe we should replant all the forests or whatever. It's an issue. Can we go further in terms of generating food out of things that are not necessarily starting off as growing things in the ground?
I think you take things in stages. So for example, we're working on, right now we're sourcing our protein from peas, and we're working on processes that we can use to source protein from things that are waste feedstocks, so things that are currently byproducts from, say, oilseed crushing. So you take sunflower seeds and you crush them, you get sunflower oil out of them. That waste byproduct is sunflower meal. It currently gets used as feed, gets fed to cows and pigs. not a food source right now, but we can actually take that same sunflower meal and convert the protein into something that is palatable for people to eat and use in our milks the same way we're using pea protein. So I think that's it, you take it step by step by step, and you can get to certainly a far more.
Okay, so that's one way of approaching the problem. Sven, I know you have thoughts about different ways of approaching this
I think
sustainability question.
Yeah, at the end, things are made out of atoms, and the atoms need to come from somewhere. So taking a more efficient feedstock is one avenue, and this is kind of what you talked about. Another one is, if we have to grow things, maybe we can grow things differently. So right now, if you look at the big crops like soy, for example, or corn, it is very, very intensive agriculture. And it's very intensive agriculture for a good reason, because it's highly efficient. And we have these combined systems. So on one side, we have broadcast chemicals and genetic engineered food crops that kind of get us to this sort of productivity. So we have, for example, one company that builds agricultural robots. And so instead of using Roundup, for example, to kill all the weeds, these robots have a vision system, and they look at every plant, and they look at all the weeds, and then just selectively kill the weeds and leave the crop. So you don't need the broadcast chemical, and you don't need the genetic engineering. So you can actually have a more sustainable farm. The thing that is important here is it needs to work at the same scale, at the same speed as our current agriculture works, which is already a highly efficient system. But that's another avenue to think about this problem. So yes, we still need to grow things, but maybe we can grow them in a by far more sustainable manner.
But then you're talking about a robot doing work that humans could do or did do in the past.
Well, in this particular case, there's actually not that many humans involved. So if you go to a large soy farm or a large corn farmer, it's not that there's literally hundreds of thousands of humans removing weeds.
That's why we have Roundup, yeah.
Yeah, so really what it is a planter that plants the crop, and then it is a large broadcast sprayer that sprays the herbicide everywhere. This is not massively labor-intensive operation, really. Yeah.
Right. But what is the advantage of using a robot? Exactly.
Oh, yeah, so there's a couple of things. So one of the problems with broadcast chemicals is that after a while they stop working. So some of the weeds become resistant to the broadcast chemical, and then the efficiency of the farm actually goes down. So you need to invent a new combination of the herbicide and a new crop that is resistant to the herbicide, so you can continue. And this is a long and slow process. It takes a while to do that. It takes basically a decade to go through one of those iterations. At Blue River, if we want to kill a new weed, it's basically a retraining of the vision system. And the retraining of the vision system takes a day, maybe a week, but that's it. So all of a sudden we can become resistant to these sort of changes in the ecosystem.
And is this happening now? Is it being applied?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
We are doing that now.
Right. So where does this fit in the discussion between intensive agriculture and organic agriculture, for instance, which is about whole ecosystems and the things that get destroyed by quote-unquote efficient systems?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to equate efficiency with necessarily destructive. I think what has happened is a lot of the things that were highly efficient were not particularly good for the environment in the past. But the answer can't be, let's be less efficient. In particular, when faced with the fact, you mentioned how many people we need to feed in the near future. The answer to that can't be, let's all be less efficient. So we need to have the efficiency still very high, figure out what good feedstocks are to use for the products that people really want to buy, and at the same time, maybe we can change the operation of these sort of at scale farms. from, for example, a chemical-focused way to, for example, to a robotics-focused focused planting.
Okay.
But we still want efficiency. Efficiency is generally good.
Okay. So you mentioned that you look for scalability when you're looking at a venture like this. But in terms of what you've observed about what succeeds and what doesn't, what's the magic ingredient for a company that's looking at this sector?
Well,
I mean, if the way we approached the problem was really identifying processes that will scale that can scale very quickly and effectively, because in the end of the day, you need to get your product out there. When we launched, we had no idea what consumer acceptance of a pea milk would be, right? We wanted to get it out there in the market and identify whether this was going to go or not. So we wanted to get that process designed and scaled very, very quickly. And that's what we did. We identified, we went from founding the company to developing the process to launching product within about a 15-month period.
And it's comparable in price and so on.
Yeah,
so do you get a payback as a company for being eco-friendly? Is that a conscious part of your marketing?
It's not what we lean in with first. We lean with nutrition first. We've got 8 times the protein of an almond milk and 10 times the protein of a coconut milk. We lean with nutrition first, and sustainability is something that kind of comes along for the ride. When it comes to alternative dairy products, people go to their alternative dairy products for a variety of reasons. Some of it is sustainability, some of it is nutrition, some of it is animal ethics. They go to some of it is allergy or lactose intolerance. So people come to the sector for all sorts of different reasons. Sustainability is just one of those.
Okay, so both of you briefly, we're looking, let's say we get to 9 billion. What's going to, ventures like this, what else is going to help us meet that challenge? What do you see in terms of the revolution in food production?
I think it goes back to these, there's only 2 choices, right? We need still atoms at the end of the day. So the question is, where do they come from and how do we actually produce them? And so one is we need to be less wasteful with the feedstocks. So more efficiency here really, really helps. So maybe milk should not go, the protein I get from the milk should not first go through a cow in order for me to get there. So that's one. And the other thing is we still need to grow a lot of stuff to feed all of those people. That problem still persists. And the question is, can we grow things that in a manner that is a lot less harmful to the environment? But still makes good economic sense for a farmer to actually do, because otherwise it just won't be deployed.
Right. Neil?
I think you're going to see a big change in the way food companies look at R&D. Right now, R&D spending in the food industry, well, you think about innovative companies and how much innovative companies spend on R&D, and you're looking at 15 to 20% of revenue on R&D. A traditional food company spends in the order of 0.5% to 1.5% of revenue in R&D, and most of that is how we package the product so that a person will buy it.
Right.
It's not about the food itself.
So does that mean that the real innovation is going to come from startups, from small companies?
I think to start, yes, and our hope is that it evolves and ends up in larger companies as well.
I hope so too, and I'm sorry we can't continue this conversation because we're out of time, but thank you. Please thank our guests.
Thank you.